Welcome back to the Grindhouse Massacre tournament. We have Sympathy's CEO on Wesker on Coal Tower 1, killing Vicinal's survivors of Grey, Slasher, Grezero, and Sweaty Nurse main, also known as Evan. We have a reasonably standard perk build here for CEO with Eruption over Pop, probably the oddest part there, but we do not see Egg as one of the add-ons. We see Leather Gloves instead, so it's going to be a little bit more difficult for CEO to navigate around some of these tiles holding the power. But we see first chase coming in, Sweaty Nurse main's David taking CEO around main building. One of the doors already broken, Firecracker already used. CEO using the time to look up to dodge the flashlight, the Firecracker, excuse me, to start the bound. Getting the hit because of it. Orman tiles dropped over here on the top side of the map. Sweaty takes the vault, CEO doing a mind game. Fools Sweaty just enough to make them play this filler tile instead, but against Wesker, playing this filler tile might actually be better for Evan. We saw another survivor off in the distance, possibly having for a flashlight save, as we do see CEO get the hit through the window. We see another survivor in the tile, still hovering. We'll see if that's this flashlight survivor. We do see CEO picking up Sweaty Nurse main. Airing to this middle map hill hook, gonna be a very easy to camp both this hook on the hill, this generator next to it, and the whole top half of the map. This is a great hook position for any killer on Coal Tower, but Wesker can use this pressure extremely well. Sees the gen with a lot of progress, not wanting to commit to it, letting the gen fly. As we do see instead a chase next to the hook, and we do see a very difficult tile for Wesker to deal with, this eye filler tile. Grezero makes to the tile against the vault, as we do see the second generator pop. This gives CEO an approximate location of where all these survivors are. Grezero's here next to the hook, and the other two survivors at where the gen pops were. And we do see a beautiful slamming Grezero the ace into Jake to get the injure and infection. The injure onto both and the infection onto one. Although it does mean that Grey does get the unhook. But that does mean that there's no one able to take a body block without giving a 1-for-1, even on the double save. And we see Sweaty does play the God Rock on the filler tile for a little bit before CEO feels the need to break the pallet and drop Chase. Chase now with two survivors over at main building. Now we see the infection onto Grey as well. We have three survivors infected. It's going to make Wesker's power cooldown come back 1.5 seconds faster a charge. That doesn't mean too much with one or two survivors, but as soon as you hit 3, you start to get a 2 charges back 3 seconds faster. And we see CEO trying some bump logic, not getting it. But again, this is where CEO wants chase to be happening. On the top side of the map, right around main building, you get to defend the generators that are easiest to defend and give survivors even one more off in the distance. As we do see the hook onto Grey, at least the down, should be a hook. Now in this situation, you have a hook up by main building. You have 1, 2, 3, I believe all 4 generators up in this area. Going to be very easy for CEO to camp all of these objectives at the same time. Let's see if we can figure out where that last generator is. We do see CEO committing far away from all the way across the map. We see the chase all the way at Shack. It means that the hook is going to come in for free. And yes, all 4 of these generators are on that top side of the map. CEO leaves the hook, leaves all 4 generators, goes for a chase onto Sweaty Nurse main on Shack's side, and gives up all of the pressure that they were building already. Does mean that the only injured survivor now is Grey, who made it most of the way down the map. Once again, playing one of these God Rock filler tiles. Great against Wesker, hard to use your power. And that's why you will frequently see Weskers bring brutal strength to zone away from these filler tiles. Make sure if you stray too far, you get a power. If you don't go far enough, you get brutal and caught up anyways. As we do see Sweaty here now trying to escort Gray onto Shaq. And because of that, CEO once again leaves Chase. And that means Gray will get reset, get disinfected, and you're now back in the situation where you have to defend these 4 generators against 4, almost 4 health survivors. And this is why CEO was bringing Eruption. Eruption's going to make it so you can kick off these gens and commit to one of those chases and get some aggression on the down so you can then come back and defend your gens. But you only have Eruption set on 1 generator right now. We see once again CEO committing all the way across the map, chasing Sweaty at Shaq. Gets on the first dash. Pardon, that took both charges. And the drop during the cooldown to make sure you don't get 2-tapped. And now this is when CEO is choosing to go back. Once again, getting 1 health state, going back up to this 4-gen. This middle generator is starting to get a scary amount of progress. Gets the vault on the Walmart windows, double window tile, chasing Gray. Misses the swing on the window. Good fake by Gray. Oh, that's dirty. The dodge into faking the window so CEO vaults it means you can no longer chase Gray. It's too long gone. That means you lose your main building generator. This middle one is high progress. It has Eruption if you can get it down, but that's what CEO is struggling with right now, getting the down. The kick comes in, hoping that you can stall it just long enough to get some pressure going, but you have to stay close enough to gen survivors can't commit to it. CEO stuck in a position like a Rottweiler fenced to a tree. You can't leave this gen too far, but it means what these survivors can do is walk right by on the sidewalk, just bait CEO just enough to pull the length of CEO's chain. That means you have no ability to go back to this generator quickly. We see 2 or 3 survivors pulling and tugging at CEO's pressure, getting a pre-drop. But at this point, you would expect the survivors are probably working 1 or both of the generators that aren't here in mid as a nice safety net. This generator is still regressing. Survivors didn't get to commit long enough for the 5% to stop the regression. Once again, getting both dashes used for just an M1 onto Degree 0. CEO looks at the gen again, sees that Sympathy Nurse main, leaves it, knows no one's on it. Now you have a chance to get some Eruption onto that generator, but it means that you're so far away from the other 2 generators. And now we have Sympathy Nurse main Evan back defending Degree 0. And another Godrock filler tile as the last generator pops. You have no no-ed, you have no way out, you have no endgame perks. The best option CEO has is to try to get it down into a 2nd kill, and by that point the survivor should have left. And here we have Sweaty Nurse main forcing Locker, already hooked once. So only going to give up 2 stages if Sweaty Nurse main is left here. And survivors at this point should have an exit gate done. And there's the exit gate open, choosing to leave Evan on the hook. That should be 4 stages if this goes through. 4 stages too fresh against the Wesker is a definitive showing. This was Sympathy's pick because they killed first. That is a exclamation point on the end of that. You're gonna put your killer in a very easy spot, and you're gonna have to make these Sympathy survivors pull off something even better, trying to make sure this Wesker only gets a 1k, but we'll see what they can do very shortly. Welcome back to Sympathy versus Vicinal. We now have Vicinal's killer G-Bot on the Wesker. Coal Tower 1 against Sympathy survivors of Mars, Phantom, Tippy, and CEO. The tie condition from last game was 4 stages too fresh. So that means the win condition is 4 stages 3 fresh or 5 stages flat. We see first chase coming in quickly with the main building corner piece getting broken and G-Bot immediately swapping over to another chase. We once again see an add-on that isn't egg. I believe that is a VCR device that increases the infection rate, and we see the more standard pop instead of the eruption. But beyond that, everything else is pretty standard between these builds. And standard survivors playing pallet gyms well. Phantom getting the vault, but punished after by G-Bot with a great 2 dashes. Phantom had a lot of distance, but G-Bot closed it and got the hit. So now we see Chase once again going around main building, as we saw a lot in the previous game, trying to find a way to play around this filler tile. G-Bot manages to almost nick the pallet to stop the momentum to make the second dash even easier. I like that tech, and I'm going to try to use it tomorrow. That is an amazing maneuver by G-Bot to make that down come in so much easier. And now you have a great hook. This is a hook behind main building on Cold Tower 1. This is the absolutely perfect hook position. Extremely hard to be able to get this, as you have to run into the open like that to get the unhook, and you have nowhere to go afterwards. Now we're going to see G-Bot on the hard tunnel onto Phantom. Counting out to BT, pull out your stopwatches. We're counting to 10. That's our first lesson of comp DBD. And we see once again a beautiful survivor fake the window to force Wesker through it, this time by Phantom. But Phantom's still going to go down. We see CEO next to Chase with a flashlight. I don't know if they were coming in for a hit or a hover, but neither are going to work, as Phantom's going back on the hook. And this is a pain res on a hook that faces the outer wall of the map. That is once again beautiful RNG and a great hook position. And cover your eyes, that's a blast mine. As G-Bot goes to kick this generator with high progress, only one generator has popped for the second hook. This might be a very fast tunnel out, and based off the win condition might be it, but CEO says no for the people to make sure that Phantom stays healthy. Now this add-on that increased infection rate is going to mean the Wesker insta-down power is going to come faster than you normally would in a match, but we do see Phantom going all the way to Shack, drops the God Rock pallet, gets the stun, it gets kicked, and now here we are at Shack against the Wesker. We get the vault in as the second gen pops. If this pace keeps up, that you get about 1 gen per hook, it's not going to be enough, since you have to get 4 to tie in a best case scenario. And there's 5 gens you have to pop as a survivor. But Phantom doing a great job at stalling G-Bot at Shack for as long as possible. G-Bot just about to get 2 charges back, but not before Phantom gets the window vault. And here we do see a 3rd gen pop. This is the timing that we're kind of hoping for this survivor team. And now we do see the Shack pallet dropped. And we see a hit tank coming in. Mars can take the M1. When we take a look at these gens, we see 2 on the main side. We see 1 of the survivors on the Shack side, Barton. Might as well be the survivor side on this map. But we do see G-Bot now committing on to Ace once more. Now an insta-down with power. No egg to hold that farther to get the angle. Once again, that's the downside of not letting egg. But you still have brutal strength to kick this pallet and keep Phantom zone. Make sure you can't get back to Shack safely. With no brutal, you might have a chance to. But without brutal, that's a lost cause. Just like Phantom staying in this chase, that's the insta-down by power for reaching full infection. That red, almost bubbly circle around Phantom being the icon for that. And now G-Bot gets a tunnel out. Now you have a 3v1, 1 gen left. Make that 0 gens left. If these survivors can get all 3 people out with no stages, they manage to win the set. If 1 person goes down, gets hooked 1 time, you have to try to save them. You can only give up 1 hook stage. You have to play to get all 3 people out, and soon. You see Mars stalling as long as they can at this God Rock next to the Exegate. This Exegate not ready yet, and the M1 over the pallet should mean that G-Bot will be able to save the tie condition at minimum.
7 minutes is all I can spare to play with you.
choosing not to hook next to the exit gate, wants to walk it further, thinks about it, says, never mind, I'm gonna camp the gate. If you take that survivor to the hook on the hill, you're far enough that you can't patrol both the survivor and this close exit gate. By hooking so close to this exit gate, you can patrol both at the same time, which means only the other exit gate is a valid exit strategy, increasing the distance you have to do when they open the exit gate. They have to come back for the save, and they can't let Mars hit second or another survivor get hooked at all. And Gbot knows that. Gbot knows that you can choose to defend this person. You don't have to fish for a third person to put on a hook. All you have to do is deny the unhook or make sure it's a 1-for-1. Fifth stage in any capacity is the win for the Wesker set. And now you see CEO starting to start on the gate. It just now hit 75%. That gate has about 5 seconds left. The unhook comes in by the atom. Mars is the only survivor with a health state to give that base kit BT borrowed time endurance. And because of that, choosing to go for Tippy instead. You got another dash. Gotta hit it, and you hit it. If you miss, then the survivors get out, it's over. But instead, it's over the other way. Tippy going on the hook is the set win. That's all you have to play for. We'll wait. And that's the set win, unless I get told otherwise in my ear. That is the 5th stage. And that will be Vicinal. Gbot only needing 5 stages. Survivors realize the match is over. You're gonna save your dignity and start thinking about set 2. Because that was Sympathy's pick. Now we're going to Vicinal's pick, which was Nurse on Coal Tower 1. We'll be on the same map with some blinking instead of dashing when we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Grindhouse Massacre tournament. We saw on Sympathy's pick of Wesker that Vicinal took the win, and now we're on Vicinal's pick. They have Evan, Sweaty Nurse main, playing You'll Never Guess What Killer, Nurse. Aim checks out. Versus Sympathy's Phantom, Tippy, CEO, and Mars. You see a pretty standard Nurse build of Corrupt, Pop, Dying Light, and choosing Ruin as a 4th. Completely reasonable. With your standard add-ons. The important one being you have Mangled on hits, and the other one, as we see now, the Undetectable on Blanket, and that causes a 2-tap. And we see Mars going down fast, but for those who don't watch comp much, that's okay. That's not too far from expected, because these survivors have a lot of tools to crank out these gens and survive in the meantime. But we do see Sweaty Nurse main with a basement hook. Nurse not caring about pain res because it is banned, so you can hook anywhere you want to, and choosing basement, you can blink right back into it. Gives you easy access, and survivors are going to struggle with it. As we now see Sweaty Nurse main trying to find where these survivors are. Checks the middle gen, checks a side gen, checks another side gen. Looks like they want to play around a loose 3 gen focused around this shack. Basement 4 gen, excuse me, as we see 1 gen on the hill next shack. Choosing to blink on top of it, seeing nobody's there. We do see, I believe that is the Hex Totem, approximately downstairs main, and 3 gens on the top. That's a nice 3 gen to hold, but Sweaty main perfectly fine giving up, knowing that giving up this 3 gen won't be too bad. But seeing that Mars got unhooked, gonna go on Phantom on this top side, waiting for the second blink charge. Here it is. Here's the charge. And oh, yep, that's another down. And once again, and with the 2-tap. Now we do see 1 gen does pop off in the distance. But as a Nurse, you now have a second hook. That's a second stack of Dying Light, because neither of those were the Obsession. Only lost 1 gen for it, because this one you can hit with pop if you feel the need to, but Sweaty Nurse main feels there's nothing they need to kick, because these survivors are the ones kicking the bucket. You've seen 2 Two chaps so far. Beautiful blinks by Sweaty Nurse main. Oh, pardon, they can't kick it because of Ruin. I remember what that perk does. As we now see Evan exploring a bit, trying to figure out where these survivors are. That might have been one stealthing, I'm unsure. Understands the timing of these plays, blinks back to the hook. As Ruin does get cleansed, we now know where 3 of those survivors are. But the only one that Evan needs to know the location of is the one they're swinging at, and for once doesn't get the hit on the swing. That may be the first time we've seen this match where a swing comes through that's just not there at all. And we do see you gotta be careful to play around Shaka's Nurse not blinking to the basement. Instead, Evan gets a face full of tarp. And now Sweaty Nurse main gets the down onto Phantom. We might see the same play as last time. You get the hook into the basement. We'll find out where they decide to go, as we do see a second generator pop in the distance. But now we do see Phantom in basement death hook. Nurse has enough pressure that in a 3v1 you can basically stop almost any gen from getting done, maybe one more. So if Phantom dies here, you're looking at a 4k1 as a good situation for survivors, but to be fair, that's the expected result. Ruin's now gone, so you can pop this gen, but Nurse main focusing more on the chase of the survivor. One blinks for distance, holds it, gets the second fast and goes straight back. And I believe that was Mars in chase. I'm not quite sure. Chase hasn't started yet. Should be going for the kick now. There's the pop. You still have this solid 4 gen on the bottom side. Blinking back to Shaq, expecting the unhook to come through, but we don't see scratch marks on the basement stairs. And instead we see them at the top of the stairs. Tippy, I don't think you can get this save. It's a Nurse. Gets the dodge, so they will get the unhook. Great jukes by Tippy. Make sure to get this unhook, and make sure you only get one survivor here. Downs Tippy, but Sweaty Nurse main wants more. Sweaty Nurse main wants the kill. Evan wants the down and gets the down very quickly after the unhook. That might have been under 15 seconds. That might have denied borrowed time, I'm unsure, but possibly by the other downs, Tippy might still have deliverance up if they are the deliverance survivor. Phantom now dead. Tippy does pick themselves up from basement. Very unlikely somebody would go down there to get the pick up that quickly, and usually you'll see Unbreakable and Deliverance on the same build, and it's an Adam. Surprise, surprise, it's probably the Deliverance player. We know where one of these other survivors are. A beautiful blink onto Mars, predicting where they would dodge into, and now here's a 2 blink into a beautiful dead hard by Mars to make this chase go on. That's the weakness of Nurse. Your hit is super predictable, and as a result of that chase taking a little bit longer, survivors can safely pop that 3rd generator. That's all 3 of the gens on the top side, that main side of the map, almost boxing in Mars to deny them from running, but doesn't get to. Mars now choosing to die top side, far away from the gens that need to be progress, close to the gens that are done, and that's a good macro decision by the survivors here. And Evan knows that. He knows if you get this hook, you might be giving up a gen for it, and the difference between a 4k2 and a 4k1 is big. Once again, patrolling around. Trying to find a survivor working on these generators, and instead you see the pickup onto Mars come through. Now you do find Tippy, you find the Atom, the likely Deliverance, Unbreakable likely already used, and there's the down, a beautiful hit. Once again by Sweaty Nurse main. You understand the username now if you didn't before. If you haven't seen this person's play, well, you're seeing it now. And it's not going to take too long for you to figure out why they have this name. They play a lot of Nurse. Now you have 4 stacks of Dying Light, not getting another one because Tippy, the Atom, was the obsession. And there's the broken on the unhook. If anything says Deliverance, I don't know, it does. And we do see the V down. Once again, we expect Tippy to be the deliverance. We expect that pickup previously to be unbreakable, so now you know there's no unbreakable left in play. And now you can start going for some pressure. Tippy does get picked up. Unbreakable self-recovery speed means someone can just tap that unhook, that pickup. Now it looks like we're once again trying to find the injured Tippy. Blinks through a 4-lane, does another short blink and gets the down again. This time do you pick up? Yes, you do. And now we're back onto this game of Nurse in a good position in a 3v1. Can you crank out the gens or at least survive long enough to pressure something? And this is the part of the game where we're going to remind viewers once again about the 8 gen regression limit that Behavior added. This is where you start to have to think about it, because this Nurse is going to be kicking a lot of gens. So the survivor team needs to do some math as Mars gets the unhook and Tippy goes away, trying to pull the Nurse away from this generator with high progress. Sees the survivor committing to it, takes the M1 instead of the grab to try to finish it, and does pop the gen that looks like a hard throw if you're in pubs, but in comp, that is a beautiful, beautiful play. This is a gen that would be extremely difficult to get progress on. If you leave it, you might never get that progress back. You are happy to sacrifice this hook and even the game to make sure that gen pops, because a 4K1 against the Nurse is relatively manageable, but a 4K2 can be difficult and dependent on RNG. So popping that generator is a big thing, because that might be the last gen that these survivors have a chance of popping. But now we see Mars getting pushed away. Sweaty Nurse man expecting to find Tippy, going for the save, but he's helping for it and does find Tippy. Having an approximate location of all 3 of these survivors means you get to commit to one of them. You get the hit onto Tippy. Tippy's injured. Tippy's death hook. Getting the blink through the hill with a great setup for the second blink. And now we do see unhook onto CEO. That one is likely second wind, but we'll confirm shortly. Based on the fact Tippy stayed broken, that's the only other perk that would do that. This should be the death on the Tippy, as CEO does get the second wind heal. And now you have to start making a hard decision as the survivor squad. Do you try to pressure one more generator, or do you try to find a way to set up one of your survivors getting hatch or an exit gate? 4K1 being the expected result for Nurse means a 4K1 with somebody out through hatch is a good little bit of an edge over that standard 4K1 win condition, meaning that even if you only get 4K1, you might have just enough of an edge to force your opponent to 4K2. But Sweaty Nurse main still focused on the gens. Here we see the spikes from the maximum gen regression limit coming in. So we start what might be a very slow end game situation. Spoiled very quickly by a very fast find onto CEO, and even faster it onto CEO. Once again, 2 blinks, that's a hit. Welcome to Nurse gameplay and comp. And we'll see. Predicts the comeback or assault very quickly. Gets a great down onto CEO. Great interactions from both sides. And now we see CEO getting slugged. Sweaty Nurse main wanting to get the 4K proper. Seeing this gen is no longer regressing means somebody was on it recently. We know based on where CEO was that it couldn't have been them, so Sweaty Nurse main knows Marius has to be somewhere in the vicinity. But where exactly is a great wonder. Time to just float around, blink around, try to either find Mars on a rotation to do a gen or get the pickup, and we see the pickup come through. We believe Tippy was the unbreakable survivor, which means CEO had to get picked up by Mars. So you know both of these survivors are in this general vicinity to wherever they crawl to, and now you see scratch marks. There's no pools of blood. That means this is going to be Mars. A lot easier to find an injured survivor than a healthy one. So finding the healthy one seems like it doesn't matter, but it's a big difference, as it's likely these survivors will never be able to heal each other for the remainder of the match, besides to pick themselves up. And as I say that, CEO heals, likely with the med kit they brought in. Making sure I eat my words, but it looks like Mars is going to be eating a weapon to their back, falling to the ground as Nurse gets a great blink, and Sweaty Nurse makes choosing to pick up Mars. That's Mars' second hook. You have to start thinking, do you go for the unhook? Do you go for the hatch? Or do you go for an exit gate? Does Mars hang on? Does Mars give up? Holding a blink, looking at exit gate, looking at a generator, looking at the hook. Fly like a butterfly, sting like a bee, more like blink like a nurse and hit like a nurse, because these chases are great, but right now we're focusing on the movement. That's the sound of a either missed or given up on skill check. Gives enough of a clue for Evan to start walking over to the hatch that spawns right here at Shack. These comp players know where it spawns by the offerings, the annotated blueprint, sending it to Shack and always spawning the exact same spot on this long wall. Gets a little bit closer to the open wall, but seeing that there's no survivor here, choosing to hover a little bit, trying to figure things out. Choosing not to close it yet, and there's the close. You see where the exit gates are. Took a couple seconds because you know there's no way they pop the generator based on the progress, no way they get to hatch because you're there. Gives you some time to think about your game plan, figure out where the exit gates are, or ask your teammates in comms where they saw them earlier in the match. But we do see one gate, one light on this gate, means the survivor was here, means the survivor can be spotted by scratch marks. And at this point, unless something extremely unusual happens, this will be a 4K1 proper for Vicinal's killer side of Sweaty Nurse main. That's the expected result. But as I say that, something unusual does happen, and then CEO gets found. I correct myself the second that I would be proven right after being proven wrong. Almost as fast as these blink hits are coming in. And there's another one to add to the tally marks. That'll be a hook onto CEO. That'll be a 4K1, and we'll see if Sympathy's killer can save this match for them, because they will need to at least tie a 4K1 to send us over into the tiebreaker, and we'll see if they can do that right after this break. Welcome back to Sympathy versus Vicinal. We currently have Sympathy's CEO up against these Vicinal survivors of Gray, Slasher, Greezero, and G-Bot on Nurse Cold Tower 1. This was Vicinal's pick. Sympathy is trying to match or beat the 4K1 flat Tycon. Vicinal took set 1 and set an expected result for this matchup, so it's a 4K1 flat or better for the killer side to force us into a tiebreaker, as we see CEO does get a hit onto G-Bot, who we'll see where they went. CEO holding this in for a long time, gets the blink before they get to Shack, and down. And let's look at these perks. These are some perks. You don't have Corrupt and you don't have Ruin. Instead you get Call of Brine and Rancor. Rancor is an odd one, but it says likely you don't want it for the exposed endgame, because if you get to endgame you're probably in trouble unless you're just trying to secure the 4K1 flat in an endgame situation. But more than likely you're just trying to get information of where survivors are every time a generator pops. But right now, CEO's getting a lot of information just by sitting on this hill and looking around. Has no problem proxy camping this hook. Looking for survivors, hovering for a fast save, I would presume, not seeing anything. But if one of these survivors gets a cheeky last second unhook, that might get a lot of value and a lot of chase into this. And now you see Columbine giving you some information, Rancor gonna be giving you information, and Meg gonna be giving this survivor team an unhook, going down for it. Likely the Deliverance Unbreakable survivor based on the playstyle. G-Bot likely the balanced landing by the fact you go for that hill off the unhook. But at this point, BT should be over, but missing that blink likely means that Slasher, if they have Deliverance, they've probably procced it. Now G-Bot going edge map, dying, Slasher gets picked up. If I do some quick math, I think that means that Slasher should have gotten Deliverance by now, as we do see one generator pop off in the distance, and now you start to get that Rancor value. 2 gens pop, you get Rancor value, but at what cost? You lost 2 generators. CEO has to make sure G-Bot dies and dies soon off the tunnel out, because otherwise this is not looking too good. If this tunnel out gets denied, no super hard 3-gen to defend because you're playing on the shack side instead of the main building side where most of those hard 3-gens are occurring. Survivors doing a great job at spreading these generators. We do kind of have a 3-gen bottom side actually, now that I get a better look at it, but it's not the easiest to defend, and survivors are going to start breaking it now. Now, as soon as the nurse commits this blink over here, you should be expecting someone to get the unhook on G-Bot. But what you don't expect is CEO to miss the swing after the second blink, and they get G-Bot coming off the hook. We saw G-Bot had a balanced landing. Should be able to get balanced and the heal. The heal and the exhaustion perk. But what G-Bot being balanced landing does mean is you likely don't have a safe survivor to work main building that is still left, so that might come into play more later. But now let's focus on this chase with G-Bot. CEO gets the first tag, and again, this is going to be the tone setter. This is the definer. If this down comes in, that means you're in a 3v1 against the nurse, and these survivors still have to pop 2 gens to tie. It's going to be a tough ask for the survivor team, but they do have a good generator spread to be able to do it. At an added bonus, the tunnel out was not the obsession, and didn't change the obsession from DS, so you have a full 3 dying light stacks from that first tunnel out, adding up to about 9%. Slower progress on gens and heals. We see 2 survivors here, the Meg and the Ace, Slasher and Grizero, as we get a Columbine pop kick onto this generator. And does in place blink almost glitching you through the hill. We get a much safer hit onto Slasher. That's what nurses want to do, get safe blinks, not have to force those risky hits. You can do them if you can, but you don't want to force them. But the only thing CEO is doing is forcing Slasher to lay on the ground, getting them down and slugging, seeing there's a good skill check on this gen from Columbine. Swings and misses it on the Grizero. You know where both survivors are from Columbine procs, if I recall correctly. There was one elsewhere. Grizero greeting, trying to step back on this generator to stop all of this aggression. But instead, you're going to be taking 1 hit for it. Dodges the second, though. And that is Slasher getting picked up. I believe the Unbreakable was used the first time. At least one would be able to assume, but not so safely. Just like how it is so unsafe to loop a nurse like this, just playing LOS, but it works out for Grizero, managing to disappear. And this gen, once again, getting kicked by CEO. CEO is in charge of this match, playing a 3v1 as nurse, kicking all these gens, making sure that if these survivors want to commit, it's going to be a long, grueling match, and that's just more room for these survivors to slip up. But we do see the reset onto Gree0. We can expect a heal onto Slasher soon. If we do some ballpark math, if the heal comes through in a couple seconds, it was likely a double heal. That might have been a double heal or just a good healing perk, we're not quite sure. But because of that, these gens are still going to keep ticking down because there's no survivors working on them. It looks like CEO is perfectly confined giving up these 2 far generators. But now starting to think about them. But if you give up both those far generators, the survivors can get a very easy tie condition of a 4k1. CEO is playing for the tie, not the win, it appears. Not comfortable enough to be able to get the downs fast enough in these next couple chases. Now seeing, oh wait, there's no one on these gens, no one's trying to pressure them. CEO knows somebody should be on one, if not both of these gens. And now you see one survivor in the corner, you see scratch marks next to the generator, you see Gray running edge map, but the swing misses. Gray finding a way to get away from this generator, you would assume, going into this Ormond tile. Dropping the pallet, but still taking the hit for it. CEO looking at a down coming in soon if you want to commit to it. It looks like CEO wants to get the pop, but wants to get the down first, and they get it. You get the pickup. Likely going to hook right next to this gen. You do. That's your 4th stack of Dying Light. Now you're up to 12% slower gens. Going all the way across the map to go back to this loose Shack Side 3 gen. Oh, and they pop 2 gens in the 3 gen. That is a massive chase by Gray to get these 2 generators to pop. That means that the Tycon has, not only has the Tycon been preserved, there's no way the Nurse can get a better result than them, but it means this last 3 generators are so spread. You have one over by Shack, you have one in main, one next to main. You're gonna have to basically drive from the west coast to the east coast of the US to patrol these gens. It's just not feasible, it's not possible. But what is CEO getting this chase, and that's a good first step in the right direction. Slasher knowing that the duration of the chase isn't as important right now as the location, going down in such a spot that the unhook comes in, and so does the heal. Slasher goes down, but that's okay. CEO gets it down, but that doesn't mean this is over for the survivors yet. Knowing likely that Slasher was Deliverance based on the playstyle previously in the match, hooking them just means they come right off with no unbreakable. They're just gonna have to sit for a bit. An ambitious firecracker, but also an ambitious swing that doesn't land. CEO over by the main building. Still has to commit to Gray. You have to get downs and hits to get pressure. But somebody's gonna have to go over to Slasher to pick them up. That should be what Gree0 is doing. That looks like what Gree0 did, which means CEO has a little bit of free time to save this game. You get the down onto Gray, you know about where these 2 survivors are, or you just pick up Gray, try to force these stages, try to get this to an endgame situation that's winnable for you. Gree0 and Slasher get the heal off, but that means Gray now is on Death Hook with a 5th stack of Dying Light, 15% slower generators. Even if these survivors double it, it's gonna take a while. You should be able at this point to get 2 hits and a down before a gen gets doubled, but finding where these survivors are is the question, as we do get one that is found. Gree0 over by Shack. Don't know where Slasher is, but likely are they going to be pressuring gen or going for the unhook is the question that everyone has watching. And we see that Gray gets unhooked. We see a quick 1 blink just to make sure the launch hits onto Gree0. You get the 1 blink back right now. You get the heal off onto Gray, and Gree0 make sure that that chase is not over yet. Dodges the swing, drops the Shack pallet. Pallets don't mean too much against Nurse, so dropping them isn't too bad, but Gree0 drops instead on the pallet. But now Gree0 crawls into basement. going to be a longer process to hook. You have a big decision. Do you hook Gree0 and try to start having this game end, or do you have to start going for something more? Looks like CEO says they want to go basement. They're stalling for time. I need to go top side. I need to go main side. Especially since Gree0 is the obsession. It would not give you a dying light stack. And now Gree0 gets picked up. Now you know somebody else is down over on the shack side of the map, but where's that third survivor? CEO says they're not here. They might have been in main based on the progress of this generator, but Gree0 gets healed. The survivors have stabilized this game. CEO still hoping you can get a large enough snowball to end the game before gen pops. You would say in pubs a 4K, that's good, that's great, happy for you, but in comp, that's not how it goes. You have to beat the other team's win condition, and the win condition is survivors can't pop the 5th gen. Now we see Gree0 all the way in the distance. Slasher's closer, but not close enough to CEO's weapon. The swing misses, and now the chase goes on. Slasher doubles back, CEO calls it. There's a pallet in the way, can't get the swing. But at this point, is main building gen being doubled? Is main building gen gonna be done as Slash takes another hit inside of shack? CEO looking around. Thinks about leaving, thinks about staying, says, I gotta go. I gotta make sure these gens don't fly. And flies over there with a blink. Hoping to get back in time. Thinking that you have to check both gens. If it was me, I'd be checking main building first. It had more progress last time. CEO listening for the audio, blinking in to try to surprise whoever's in here. Doesn't find anybody. Let's look at this generator progress. How bad's the damage? That's a reasonably progressed gen that's probably sitting 60-70% with 3 pistons moving. And looks like they're also pressuring this shack gen. They're not going to be worrying about that gen off next to main. These survivors want to be playing main building, shack adjacent. Call it mid shack if you'd like to. We'll call it shack for easier comms here. As we see Gree0's here. Slasher looks nearby, but CEO once again not feeling like they have the time to look around. Having to go all the way back to main building. Make sure you have enough blinks to get upstairs. Choosing to debating between the two. Trying to figure where the survivors are and see Slasher. Slasher is in easier down, they're already injured. Going into basement. It says, oh no, if you're going to basement, where's somebody else? And finds Gree0. There's the injury onto Gree0, but at this point, is Gray done with the main building gen by now? That's the concern you have to have. But CEO says, if I get the down, I get the pop. Get the down, get the hook, get the pop. But it's too late. That's the last generator being completed. CEO for Sympathy cannot put out. And says, I'm just going to drop you and rancor you. That's a little bit faster at this point. It's a great visual, but that might be the last thing that CEO is seeing on the DVD screen today, because that will be the 2-0 for Vicinal. But let's see how many of these survivors can get out. That was a Fesh hook Mori onto Gree0 for 3 more stages. Looks like 8 stages. 3 Fesh, but that will be the 2-0 for Vicinal, taking both the Wesker and the Nurse set. And hopefully we'll see you next time on Grindhouse Massacre Tournament.